Hey everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of Finding Peaks. Yours truly, Chris Burns, founder and CEO here at Peaks Recovery. So grateful to have the Journey Inward team. We got Jory, Dawnya, as well as Tripp in the house today. I've had the blessed opportunity of spending the whole days with these individuals. They are most certainly in alignment with who and what we are at Peaks Recovery Centers, and that is engaged in the healing process for the individuals that we get to serve, as well as their family systems. And I've done a deep dive with you guys today, and I have to say it's just warmed my heart to be able to sit with people that are walking with folks into community in the name of healing. I think that's special. I think it bucks the status quo in our industry, and most certainly in alignment with one of our core values, which is to disrupt the industry through quality of care. And so thanks for coming in. Thanks for being here today. We really appreciate your time. And I'm going to start out with one of my famous questions on this show, and I'll ask each and every one of you, why do you do what you do? Maybe start with Tripp.
Well, thanks, Chris. I think, if you look at why I do what I do, you got to go back to childhood. Grew up in an affluent community. My grandfather was alcoholic, and he ended up dying of alcoholism when I was 12. But in the meantime, I was very involved in his life, and really kind of, whether I took it on or whether it was told to me, I felt it was my responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I developed alcoholism myself, had some struggles with codependency, mental illness. Got sober 20 years ago, continued to do the work, and with kind of who I was, maybe a coach, savior, I ended up really helping quite a few people throughout the recovery process, often at the detriment to myself. And so ended up getting into the treatment space, coaching families about 3.5 years ago, got into some other avenues of healing as well, ended up kind of coming back to our heart and soul of helping families. And really, I think where our sweet spot is when individuals go into some type of a healing, whether that's deep therapy, whether that's treatment, or any of the new modalities that are out there today. We have the capacity to kind of walk alongside that individual and then also within their families and help with the reconciliation. And so I look at us as, almost a post-treatment, if you will, way for us to kind of come together and help the family heal, whereas, they're kind of in the bubble of treatment centers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I saw and from losing a lot of people, right? Losing a lot of people to death, losing a lot of people to suicide, and then also seeing that repeatable pattern. I can speak for Peaks, and I know you want to heal the individual, right? Mm-hmm. And you have an amazing family program. You have an amazing staff. That's a finite timeline. Mm-hmm. So you set somebody up and you tee them up. We know that when the individual, and I know this from my own trauma treatment experience, is that when you get back out into the real world, there's a lot of very challenging adjustments. So that's really where we pick up the ball and help families heal. Mm-hmm. We also work in coordination with treatment centers like yourselves while the individual's in treatment to kind of help the family as an extra support in the background. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's so many gaps in that too, especially post-treatment. We've talked about before the show. It's one of the things that kind of hurts my heart a little bit in this mental health thing is like, I see people authentically moving through a 45-day or a 30-day process within our facility, and I see their families pick them up, and I worry that they maybe don't have a robust enough aftercare plan that supports not just the individual, but the family system as well. And obviously that's what you guys do at Journey Inward. And Dawnya, maybe tell me a little bit about what kind of gets your passion going about this, because that's something I've noticed since I've had the chance to sit down with you is you're most certainly passionate about this opportunity.
Oh, I'm very passionate, and the reason why I got into it, or why I do it still, is the stigma associated with mental health and recovery, and also just educating the family on the process, because I've seen it time and time again where someone goes to treatment and they go back to the environment they're used to, and nothing changes, and it goes back to where it was before. Mm-hmm. And having a child that's been through treatment, there wasn't a lot that was affordable to the family as far as education and what do we do next. And I myself have been to treatment, and like after 30 days, it was just like, okay, good luck, do 90 and 90, and they called me like once a year. That's all I got.
Survey,
and that, there wasn't enough. And yeah, just take the stigma out of it. Let's talk about it, and bring it more in the open and acceptable. It shouldn't be shameful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, and you're wise to destigmatize this thing. I think we're on the right track. And a lot of times what we've talked about too is it's just the way in which we communicate, the verbiage we use. It's a simple shift in a small direction. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. How about you, Jory?
So my family was exposed to treatment sort of when I was in my latter teens, and it was kind of via my brother or a family member, and just the way that was constructed very, very beneficially in our world was immediately you do not have an identified patient problem, you have a family problem. And this is back in the 80s, and we were all like, what the heck does that mean? And so we as a family had to walk the walk. And I had kind of worked in and around family systems for a long time, and group dynamics and skill building, communication skills, and I just knew the value of how the environment affects the individual, and how, you know, proper soil can really elevate growth in everybody getting healthy, and how toxic environment can really put that all down and no one can do their best. And that's just been a mainstay of my existence forever. And so even when I was a photographer for 25 years as a portrait photographer, everything in the way I would engage clients was about accessing who they wanted to be genuinely. Not who they wanted to be per se in front of the camera, but who were they really, so that others could see them. And being seen, loved, and understood, as I had mentioned earlier to you in conversations, is just it's for me, it's the most important thing. And through my own addiction and my own recovery, it's just the most valuable thing in my world. And frankly, I want to share that.
I love that. You know, and that's, I mean, 1985, talking about environments informing behavior or anything. Like,
Right.
what? Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, really cool. And I think a lot of people go, well, you know, that's a kind of a dangerous and a privileged view. I'm like, it's a much more hopeful view.
Yeah.
You know, and we have an opportunity within that view to repair. And I love what you guys talk about with the family systems. I mentioned something earlier, and I'll see kind of what you guys think about it. But it's been my experience that when the family gets into their recovery, alongside their loved one or their person, it's not if, it's when it will be successful.
Yeah.
Has that been your guys' experience? Have you been able to walk with some of these families and clients?
Yeah, I think for us, it's, if you look at kind of what I said earlier, it's very much so. So when somebody comes out and they get in the same environment without any healing, they just kind of crumble, you know. And it may happen quickly or it may happen over time.
Yep.
But it's if we can get in there and start shifting the language and allowing, as Jory mentioned, for everybody to be seen, valued, and loved in that situation, it just makes a whole different scenario, because there's new language and new abilities for people to understand each other. And you know, again, there's wonderful programs out there that people can go and get support, but they don't work for everybody. They might have worked for me,
Yeah.
right? But for some reason, they don't work for everybody. So for them to have somebody to kind of help coach them and guide them on the post-treatment, and then again integrate with the family, and just getting the family to start holding some boundaries and understanding, you know, kind of their part in it. You know, it's not that really anybody in the family is wrong. They didn't necessarily cause it, create it, and they can't cure it by themselves. It's like the same family system that has an identified patient, you know, the same minds that kind of created that can't fix it without somebody on the outside. And that goes for Dawnyas in my family and getting the help we needed. You know, we're in the business, we saw it, and we still didn't know what to do with it. You know, and that's kind of a crazy thing when you think about it, because we felt, you know, hopeless, and we're like, well, we know what to do, but we can't do it. And then you have somebody else come in beside you and they say, hey, you can do it. And you're like, oh, I can do it.
That's right. Yeah, it's a
So-
special process.
Yeah, so that, and plus being, you know, having our own process coming out of treatment, what did we need? What do we see? What did the people that we went through treatment, you know, what happened with their lives? What did they struggle with? There's deaths.
Yep.
You know, people didn't make it. There's quite a few divorces. There's fractured families. And that goes true if anybody does any type of a spiritual, you know, if you go quit drinking and join a recovery program, chances of divorce go way skyrocket. So it's like anytime you're really kind of tapping your soul, it's going to cause outward reverberations, and that's where we come in to kind of help smooth those over.
Yeah. I love that. You guys simply coined it earlier. It's like we just get into family systems and talk.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems so simple, but it's a very complex process. You know, but we just get in there and let's talk to each other.
Yeah.
That's really simple and yet profound at the same time. What's
Well,
the
what do you want, right?
You're
I
right,
mean,
communication.
you just want to
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
You
it.
don't want to be. No one wants to be told what to do. You know, and so it's like we just try to work with everybody and find out who's coming from where and get everybody in alignment to some degree.
Well, I think a lot of times families, try to kind of fix from the, kind of in their own little kind of container, and there's oftentimes some image management, and so the pressure builds up, and then you kind of end up with a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And so having somebody come in there and kind of say, hey, this isn't so bad, and this is, what Jory's trying to say, this is what Chris is trying to say, and you guys are actually trying to say the same thing, and you just start. It is deeper level conversations, but there's an art to it for sure.
Yeah. You guys said something earlier, and I want to kind of get back to it, especially for the viewers. It just kind of had my shoulders perk up and caught my attention. But you said we go into families and we form a family mission statement. Talk to me about that.
Well, I think so. One of the things when a family kind of comes together, I mean, one of the exercises we do is kind of a values planning exercise, right?
Okay.
And so, who are you? What's important to you? And that oftentimes gives me the ability to now see you and say, oh, these things are important to you. And again, a lot of times we're going for the same thing, but it's different language and different understanding. And that's really cool when you start, really getting to know each other in the group. And then we do kind of a process where we look at the family's values together and kind
Sort
of
like
what
a 30,000-foot view.
Okay.
from a 30,000-foot
Yeah.
view, and then they literally get to pick the kind of values that they want, and then we start working on a mission statement on, hey, where you guys want to go, what's important to you, and it just sort of helps everybody in the family like have some context to who we are. And I might disagree with one of those values on that makes it in the family mission statement, and you guys outvote me 3-1, and that's life.
Yeah.
Right? We're not all going to get what we want, but I mean that's actually kind of a rarity.
Yeah.
And especially in today's political, there's so much generational value shifting. There's so many, things to argue about politically. Right. And as a wealth manager for 25 years, I really saw that fray on families more and more and more. Control, manipulation, money, vengefulness. Well, I'm going to go over this way and do this because you look at me this way. And the reality is, like, families are like an organism, right? We grow over time, and like we're so connected. So to be able to kind of see who we are, and then come back together and create a mission, to me that is just magic.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, it
fun.
really is cool. It's really a cool process.
That's a lot of fun for sure. To look at some of those opportunities as a family system, and then to just think for a moment that really well-connected families don't know each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. How does that happen within family systems where, we have primal people, child-adult relationships, which we've learned through research is the most important relationship, but then we find ourselves unattuning and disconnecting. Why do you think that happens? Because it almost feels like it's synonymous with kind of the American dream, you guys.
Yeah, I think, I think there's the individual, and then there's the group. And we have to have both. We have to have our individuality. We also have to have attachment in our lives.
Yeah.
No man is an island. You hear that all the time. It's a dance between the two. And the way that we try to work with it is just figure out who wants to dance what dance, so that most people aren't stepping on one another's toes. Sometimes it's going to be a beautiful, choreography, but as long as we can start with the foundation of let's stop stepping on one another's toes, then we can get moving and coordinated.
I love that.
It's team playing, really.
Yeah.
We don't need to all be on the ball. We can just spread out and play our positions.
Yeah.
You can be independent, yet part of the team.
I love that, because the only overarching theme for that is like, yeah, we love each other, and so like let's get this right.
Yeah.
What do each one of you do as far as your roles on the team?
Well, I think we're all coaches.
Okay.
So my background is kind of in spiritual training, as well as recovery and then behavioral finance. As a financial advisor, I was trained as a certified divorce financial analyst. So I've always kind of run into kind of the conflict, right? That's kind of growing up in an alcoholic family for generations, and also being a little bit feisty, with that. So, my role is kind of a lot of times legacy planning, getting fathers to say, hey, this is what you're doing and this is what you want to accomplish. But a lot of coaching, a lot of education for all of us. Dawnya has...
I'm a certified peer and family specialist.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's
then
amazing.
also I'm a yoga instructor, more trauma focused.
Okay.
And also I'm very well known in just health and nutrition, just how that affects the brain-gut connection.
Sure.
And also just lived in experience like sexual abuse from younger age, just trauma, dealing with my own personal trauma, and family members that are substance abuse, also depression, and other mental illnesses, and just and also a cancer survivor too. So I had breast
Really?
cancer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Good for you.
Yeah.
So you're what's called cancer-free?
I am
Okay.
cancer free.
Yeah.
Not in remission.
So
Cancer-free.
I got to tell a story. So when Dawnya, when she was going through her kind of trauma around sexual abuse, it was during the Epstein kind of time frame.
Yeah.
And so the reverberations in our home was like, what's going on? And what ended up, so she ended up doing a trauma treatment for that, really found strength within inside of her. And then just through Facebook, she went out and reached out and became a support to women all over the country. And the stories of these women's lives weren't usually good. It was in alcoholic marriages. They were alcoholic, divorced, just really traumatized from this. So I think when you look at Jory, Dawnya, and myself, like, the stuff that happens to us for whatever reason, we're seekers, we're enthusiastic about helping other people. Maybe, as I said, there's a good and a bad to that. And I think we've kind of figured out the healthy side is take care of yourself, do your own work, so that you can help other people truly.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what we do. We take our experiences. I'm also a certified peer family specialist. We've ran treatment programs, family programs, and then I do life coaching just with a lot of different treatment centers for their individuals.
That's
so
cool. That's really unique too. And I love you said something too, Dawnya, about trauma-informed yoga. How does that work? Because we have a really, really big mindfulness-based component here at Peaks. We have a movement team that ambulates people, gets them up and out of the chair, sound healing, Reiki, yoga. You saw Dan today, boxing, all that stuff. So talk to me a little bit about that mindfulness-based opportunity.
It's more of a very more gentle yoga and a lot more on your breath and a lot of meditation and going internal, but it's also on the cues that you're not using, cues that are more, that could be triggering kind of thing. So it's a lot more in the language, but it's more of a gentle type of, relaxing, healing yoga.
Yeah, because I'd imagine maybe for people who have experienced any sort of, sexual assault or anything like that, you go into community hypervigilant.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're
Totally.
scanning the room. Is this safe? And so I love kind of a method behind the madness with respect to yoga. Is like this is a very informed and very intentional process for people that need it to be that way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because it's like, do yoga. It's like, I don't know if that's safe.
Yeah.
I used to make, some guys in 12-step groups, like we used to make fun of people. They'd say like, hey, you going to the meeting? They'd be like, no, I'm going to yoga. And we kind of,
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, 20 years in the program, I'm like, yoga is absolutely, everybody better damn do yoga.
Exactly.
If you want any type of mental health, you better do yoga, body, mind,
Like,
spirit.
wow, this thing really works.
Yeah, I learned more about myself doing the training.
The training?
Yeah. Oh my God, it was so.
My wife just went through it.
It's intense. Like
huge.
it's huge, and
Spiritual.
it's like I thought I was just going to learn poses, and it's like I learned more about myself than I ever did, like in any type of treatment or recovery, and it was really internal.
I found myself going to those graduations and saying to those people, like, you all should be, I don't know if I was the only person in it, but like, you all should be incredibly proud of yourselves. Like, this is heavy lift.
Yeah.
And in like 4 or 5 weeks.
Yep.
Very intense.
It's very intense, yeah.
She had a similar experience. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
I grew up quite dyslexic, And my access point through that was I was able to read a book cover to cover on an outdoor experience. And then I got into a lot of outdoor work and trip leading and working with kids through at-risk youth through prevention through education, and a lot of integration with nature. So it was skill building, communications, just prevention. So we're not going to tell you not to get pregnant, but if you do, these are some things to do. And so my whole background was in group dynamics. So generally speaking, what I do with the group is I'm working with internal family systems now as well. I like to figure out what's going on in your head and then how you can convey that or bounce that off what's going on in the group. I look at an entire group holistically and how can each piece fit to the best of its ability.
I love that. Yeah, and it's sounds like very intentional process, the way that you go into that individually with each person within that system. And do you guys find that it's always families that are supporting individuals?
No, it can be any group.
Okay, you guys mentioned group.
Any relationship.
Okay.
Including the relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the work that Dawnya and I do is couples work on reconciliation and then kind of building a sacred union. And again, this is like coming out of treatment. It's like the best time to do it. I used the analogy earlier. When we sit down with couples, I like to explain, and it's like they're driving to the airport and they think they're going to Hawaii, and then the guy has a ticket to Tallahassee and the woman has a ticket to Spokane. And so it's like, that's kind of what we feel like when you sit down with a couple, right? It's like they literally are kind of moving in different directions. So to get them to kind of focus on themselves, but also focus on that there is actually something called a union here. And again, like life is challenging. When you have a big disruption, such as a treatment, such as a death of a parent. I mean, there's a lot of these different things, birth of children, et cetera, they can really change the course for one individual, and then the other individual is sort of like, what the hell is going on? And I think a lot of times it's like, that's why we have such massive amounts of divorces, because we don't tend to the kind of relational, kind of spiritual nature as we can or could, as the world has gotten busier and busier and more hectic and more demanding.
I really like that, and that was something that really struck a chord with me when we were chatting earlier, is you brought up kind of the relapse rate, or excuse me, not the relapse rate, but the divorce rate when people get out of treatment. And it's astonishing. I saw that left, right, back, front, center, and I was telling Jory before we came in here, I was on top of Long's Peak. My wife knows this. I was on top of Long's Peak in 2016, and I'm 8 years sober at the time, and I'm thinking, yep, I'm gonna get a divorce. I'm pretty sure the grass is greener on the other side, and none of her trauma or my trauma will get in the way, and we'll have this really fluid and functional relationship. And if I would have made that decision on that day, I think similar to probably your experience as well, I probably would have made the biggest mistake of my life. Because today, through a lot of hard work, recovery, mental health, aligning, going to intensives, relationship counseling, individual counseling, all of these things, we are now both seen, valued, and heard in relationship. And that's the special sauce.
Totally.
Yeah. And I love that you guys do that too for folks that are coming out of treatment, not just all family system stuff, but also relational. I really love that. And I love the way you guys refer to it as a union, because that's what I refer to my relationship today when it's healthy and in recovery.
Right.
We are not as different as we think we are. And we try to get people to work with that and be like, how are we similar? In what ways can we show that we're similar? Because we all have the same needs and wants. All of us. It's just, what are we prioritizing at the time?
I was really fearful, like when Tripp, he got sober 7 years before me, and he was going to all these meetings and groups, and I'm like, well, where does that lead me? And also I was very closed off, and I had a very hard time sharing what was actually going on inside of me. And that created a huge divide too, because it was like he was doing all this spiritual and internal work, and I was feeling left out, and also strong-willed, or I wasn't able to become vulnerable either. So, and until I was able to show it with my emotions freely, is when the work really began.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points. It's like I see this oftentimes in treatment, whether it's husband and wife, whether the wife checks in, And pretty quickly, you're forming a community unlike anything you've ever been a part of.
Ever.
Right.
And so in 30 days, your whole life changes.
Big
And-
time.
And you're coming back and your loved one's like, am I involved in this?
Yeah.
Do I get to be with the people? No, it's closed group AA, you know? It is
Yeah.
what it can be really disconnecting initially.
It can be.
Because the person coming home is a different person.
Yeah,
So
that's when the divide happens, and we know that again, any type of shift is going to cause challenges with all your relationships, even though it's a good thing. You come back, you get sober, you learn how to have empathy for other people through this really camaraderie type experience of treatment, which moves you really into such a better place. But when you come back, it's either there's two things that can happen. Number one is no one's fixed when they get out, right? I mean, yeah, they might go to AA and start having a bunch of like real positive things that happen in your life, but more than not, they have challenges. So the spouse or the parents are saying like, hey, I just paid X amount of dollars and you're not fixed. What the hell's wrong? And it's because you were like doing great 48 hours ago, but since you've been home for 2 days, you're like coming unglued.
And you didn't have a substance to numb it.
Yeah.
To numb it, and
Right.
it like
Your binky's gone.
your
Or
behavior.
behaviors,
Yeah.
codependency.
Yeah.
And where the alcohol or the it's just a symptom. Like
Yeah.
it does,
Yeah.
it's not the actual drug that's causing it. It's what's
Right.
underneath. Until you figure that out and address that, you're just going in circles. So
You know what I used to tell young people before we had resources like Journey Inward? I used to tell them, they would come in and I'd say, I would suggest you never go back home because it never works out. I don't know
Right.
why. I can't put a method to the madness. But if you do go back home, what you're going to experience is, even if your mom's at the door, hey, honey, right when you walk in, it's going to feel like you put a weighted blanket on.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go around and your experience is going to be weighted. And why expose yourself to that? And so that's why I've always encouraged young people up until the last 5 years or so is like, go find a place, get some independence, get your community around you. We often refer to it as a family of choice. And then you will do your thing, but definitely don't go back into mom and dad's home. But there's an opportunity with the resources we have now for repair and reparation with kind of a both and situation with what you all do at Journey Inward is you can get in there and prepare the family
Totally.
for the person getting out of treatment so they walk in and they feel like they put on a sheet instead of a weighted blanket.
Yeah.
And we can deal with a sheet, man. I can
Yeah.
dance in a sheet.
Yeah.
I can do all that stuff. So
Yeah, it's kind of like I look at it as lowering the temperature. People
Yeah.
are very anxious. Like parents are anxious. They want their kid to be fixed. I mean, you as a CEO of a treatment center, parents have said to you 100 times, "I want my kid fixed." I mean, that's exactly what parents kind of come to us is like, well, I want my kids fixed, and say, okay, well, let's start looking at what's going on, and again, do it in a way where it's not the canary in the coal mine, and they feel like they're being called out. I just, I do believe deep down inside everybody wants this, and I think looking at myself, even with my own son, like the challenges that we were having for went on for a decade, when he was even younger, and kind of over time, kind of learning more and more, but looking back at that experience, not really, there's a lot of image management, there's a lot of these different, I don't really know how to fix, and again, our experience is kind of, I've been working with, or trying to help alcoholics or save alcoholics, depending on how you look at it, at different times, for 4 generations, right? And I think, even Dawnya's alcoholism, it's, when she drank for 7 years after I quit, that forced me even more into the outside world to help other people because I felt so hopeless in my own situation. So I think that happens a lot when there's addiction, codependency. It can be a messy process.
Yeah. And just to point out clearly, and I know the viewers can really relate to this, but hey man, each and every one of us got this thing living inside of us. It's called shame.
Yeah.
And we're all carrying it, and it's really heavy. Can we talk about it? So I really love what you guys do. I really appreciate you all showing up today. The opportunity we've had to spend with you, Peaks Recovery and Journey Inward, has been an awesome experience today. Before we end, do you guys want to let the viewers know website, how they can get a hold of you, the easiest way to kind of do that?
Yeah, I would say go to our website. It's thejourneyyinward.us. So it's thejourneyyinward.us.
thejourneyyinward.us.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
.us, my people. That's one thing that I will miss.
Yeah.
I'll be like, they said .com,
Yeah.
and it's not working.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nope.
Journeyyinward.us. Thank you all.
The Journey Inward.
The
The
Journey
Journey Inward.
The Journey Inward.
THE Journey Inward.
Let's go.
Yep. .us.
Thejourneyyinward.us. Awesome, you guys. Well, thank you so much for
Thanks,
coming on the
Thank
show.
you.
Thank you so
Chris,
much.
thank you.
Appreciate you very much. For all of our viewers out there, until next time, you can find us on all of the places you get your podcasts. I'm going to list them all right now. Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Music, you name it. Until next time, peace.